Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host Scotty McCoy, and boy, do I have a surprise for all of you. I have on Zoom with me right now Jordan Miller, and he is the director of The Only Ones. It's a movie coming out. We're about to find out what it is and about how you can help him be a part of this movie and exactly when it's going to come out and everything. So how you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. So glad to have you on. Let's start to learn a little bit about you. How'd you get your start into filmmaking?
I've been like making movies on various levels of professionality, my entire life. Like when I was a kid, I got a hold of my parents' little DV cam
Nice.
recorder. When you'd shoot on the little cassette tapes that are like smaller than the VHS, you'd pop them in, then you have to like had a converter to play them in a regular VHS. I would shoot skateboard videos and like nonsense videos
Nice.
and like little homegrown horror movies on those things. And then I had no idea about like editing on computers or whatever. So I would build this ridiculous rig with like one VCR rigged into another VCR, and you would just play on one tape and record on the other, and that's sort of how you would edit.
Nice.
And I like brought them to school one day and like showed some people, and they're like, "Wow, this is cool. You could do all this on computers, like really easy." And I was like, "Huh?" So from there on, I was actually not really taking filmmaking seriously for a long time. It was just something I was super interested in.
Yeah.
I was full on music. Like my first life was all like touring and playing music
Nice.
all the time, and film was just something I just loved. But when it came down to school, I ended up changing over to a film major pretty early, and from then on, taking it a lot more seriously. Started
Nice.
making like actual short films and mostly music videos because like I came up just hanging out with musicians all the time. Everyone needed a music video.
Right.
I just started doing everyone's videos, so it's just like great practice to try a bunch of different genres and styles and techniques. Doing everyone's videos. From there, moving into for graduate school, I did my first feature, which was like a dramatic feature length piece.
Okay.
From there, backing off to shorts because I felt like I jumped into a feature really early, and it was a huge learning experience. But it was something that wasn't necessarily what I would have chosen to do. It had been in that moment, but it sort of fell into my lap.
Mhm.
But from there, I'm still proud of that film. But watching your first
Yeah.
film, all you see is like failures, right? All
Yeah.
you see is like, oh damn, if I wasn't an idiot, I would have done that like way better.
Yeah.
But I'm less of an idiot now, so maybe
Yeah.
I could do it better. So I backed off to shorts, and I did a bunch of horror shorts. The first one being a film called Three, which did a bunch of festivals, won a few awards, and then got picked up by online channel called Crypt TV.
Nice.
And they're awesome. They started off being really homegrown, then got backing from I think Blumhouse and Eli Roth, and then now they make their own stuff.
Okay.
And right now we're doing this one. I've been working on other people's movies for a long time, and then COVID
Mhm.
really shut down the music thing. Like
Yeah.
honestly, like live music just wasn't happening, tours weren't happening, and I
Mhm.
was kind of like looking for a way to transition more fully into film anyway, and a worldwide pandemic is one way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I have quite a few indie filmmakers on my show, and
Hmm.
not a lot, not all of them. Like there's very few of them, and you're one of the few that actually has went to school for film. So I
Yeah.
know I wanted to go to school for film, but I never wanted to move out to LA. So my question is, with you having a degree in film, was there ever a thought that came across your mind that now that I'm going for film and get my education in film, I'm gonna go out to LA, or was it always I want to make my own indie type of movies?
Yeah, that's everyone's like big internal
Mhm.
conflict, right? That's like the ultimate question. Is it like, well, now maybe not so much. In the post-COVID world, I feel like that's not as big of a thing because the world has
Yeah,
learned you could do anything from anywhere and everything's possible.
yeah,
But at that point, especially, it was like that's what everyone's asking. Are you going to LA? And I had to think hard about that. And the reason I stayed here was a few reasons because the main thing I want to do is write my own material
Mhm.
and create it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I can't afford to do that if I move to LA and everything's expensive as fuck. And I could swear on the show, right?
Yes, you can.
Fucking
Yep,
okay, good,
absolutely.
great. Because everything's expensive as fuck. You can't afford anything. Like you gotta like sleep on a couch with five other dudes for like a few years before you find your own place. And all I would be doing is working crew on other people's things,
Yeah,
which is great. I like working crew. I love working crew, but I would never have the financial freedom to have a place and make my own content like I can out here.
Yeah.
And then if I were to go out to LA, I have a whole bunch of really great looking original content, you know,
Yeah.
that I would never been able to produce out there. That's why I decided to stay out here, because I met a whole bunch of people out here I really fell in love with making movies with.
Yeah.
And we all really get each other, and it's I don't want to leave that behind when I want to cultivate sort of what we've got going on here.
Yep. And a lot of people, like when they think of independent horror or independent filmmaking, they think really low budget, no budget type of movies. And sometimes
Sure.
that is the case.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is that the big difference between independent and like a Hollywood type, production is that independent is more freedom, whereas Hollywood, you have to answer to the main producers, the bigwigs, the studios. Whereas
Oh
if you
yeah.
do your own movie, it's like you can answer to me and I'm more flexible and free and give more freedom to my cast and my crew.
Yeah, and that's the fun part, right? Like that's
Yeah.
ultimately why we're doing all of this, is to have fun making
Yeah.
films and making something that we all love.
Right.
So having complete freedom is kind of a big thing about that. And I think maybe that's a big part of me also coming from music and always being like, you have complete freedom with music. Nobody,
Right.
especially these days, gonna tell you what to not do if you're
Yeah.
just an independent artist in the music industry. But like being able to make this is a real the only ones that we're making right now is a very unconventional film. Like it's a slasher dark comedy that
Mm-hmm.
takes like almost every familiar thing from a slasher movie that I can think of and kind of flips it upside down.
Right.
And I don't know if I would be allowed to like make that movie if I was trying to make a
Yeah.
horror comedy, for the studio. And
Yeah.
but as an indie people, you just write a script that you find interesting as what you want to see, something
Right.
that you would get a kick out of watching,
Yeah.
on a screen, and just go
Absolutely.
make
And
it.
then there's Tubi out there as well, which is a good platform for a lot of independent, filmmakers. And a lot of independent actors don't get
Yeah.
paid. They pay but they put in all their time. So with them like sometimes actors do get paid, the independent filmmakers, but they don't get as much as you would if you're out in Hollywood. And sometimes they don't get paid at all. But they give their time. So giving them that creative freedom is like, well, I might not be able to pay you with money or a lot of money, but I'm able to pay you with giving your input on how to make your character be what you would like.
Yeah, it
Having fun.
becomes more of a collaborative process, right?
Yeah.
And like everybody gains something out of that. Everyone takes some sort of ownership in the project because of that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even just talking financially, points on the back end, which is like a percent of a movie that you may
Yeah.
distribute to someone in exchange for money up front, like the
Yeah.
potential to make it back on the back end, has historically meant nothing, right? If you're making an independent movie, because you're like, hey, I'll give you points, but they're like Mario points, right? Like
Yeah.
this means nothing at the end of the level.
Right.
But like with Tubi and with like some of these smaller streaming networks that have advertisements, you can actually make some money. Like you're not
Yeah.
going to make Hollywood money, but people can
Right.
actually make money back on movies. It's kind of
Yeah.
amazing. Like my first movie that I mentioned, that all I see is failures, The Red Effect, is on Tubi, and we've gotten checks in the mail, and it's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. And Tubi is one of those game changers in streaming for independent artists because like
Yeah.
independent filmmakers, they're most likely now it's possible, but most likely not going to go onto a Netflix or Hulu. Chances are very slim to none. I mean, it's possible, but it's slim to none. Whereas Tubi is
Yeah.
that godsend for the indie filmmakers, and that really is a bonus.
It's huge. It's like just to take it back to the music industry too. It's like watching all the major labels sort of start to dissolve, right? And like
Yeah.
labels start to mean nothing, and like Spotify plays and
Yeah.
streaming. It's like, yeah, one, and you may not be financially gaining as much back as his historical major labels are paying people, but
Mhm.
like everyone can make what they want to see,
Yeah.
and you can go find the stuff that you like to see out there, and it's all
Mhm.
readily available, and it takes like the power out of the gatekeeper's hands in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And of course, one of those movies that I'm assuming isn't out yet, obviously, but it's the only one, which is what you're directing.
Right.
So
Yeah. Oh, it's
for
definitely
those,
not out yet. we're
right.
only
So,
we're only two
but
weekends into shooting, but we have a bunch of
okay.
scenes in the can, but we're in production right now.
Awesome. Sounds great. So tell us what this movie is about.
All right. So as much as I can tell you now without blowing the whole gag of the movie, because the experience is meant to be watched, hopefully knowing nothing going in.
Okay.
But it's about a group of friends who have knew each other from high school. They're getting together years later. They're going out to one character's house whose uncle has died, and they're going out there to sort of appraise the situation in the house, see what the condition is, blah blah blah. When they get out there, they run into some other characters, setting into motion a series of events that spirals out of control, and dead bodies start to pile up.
Nice.
And the approach of this movie is a black comedy in the style of sort of the Coen brothers style
Okay.
dry comedy where the situations are ridiculous, but my characters are playing them straight as an arrow. Uh,
Nice.
and somewhere in there is where the comedy exists. There and with
Nice.
the ridiculousness of the violence and the stuff that happens.
Nice. So where did this idea come from?
Actually, from a close friend of mine, Matt Burns. I think you
Oh,
know Matt. Do
I
you
know
know Matt?
Matt. Yep, I know
Yeah, so
Matt. Great
I've
guy.
known Matt since high school. Back when I was playing in a punk band and he was booking punk shows, and he would book us at all the train stations and Grange halls and whatever.
Nice.
And we we just kind of fell out of contact for years.
Mhm.
And then both of us separately moved into the genre film community and reconnected at Creature Feature Weekend years
Nice.
ago. And since then, we've been like, oh, we got to find something to make together.
Yeah.
And then he came to me with this idea. He had someone write a script. It didn't turn out quite like what he wanted it to be. And he knew I was writing a lot of stuff at the time. I always am. And then he came to me. He's like, hey, I have this crazy idea for a really out of the box slasher where there's like no traditional killer in the woods. It's more of a really more intangible kind of thing that's all meant to be a confusing web of chaos and hilarity. And I was like, okay, this sounds really interesting. That's not really anything I've seen before. So this happened one time before with the script where Matt came to me with an idea he thought was funny about actually an article called Meth Gators where about people had dumped drugs in the sewers. And he was like, this would be a hilarious script. And then we like joked a little bit. And then the joke became like a real idea for a script. And then like 100 pages later, there's like a featured script that we've won some awards with that script too, but it's way too expensive to actually make.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
just a for fun thing. But then when he came to me with this, we're like, okay, we can sort of do the same thing as before. Like you feed me this idea, we come up with something that actually works, and then I just roll with it.
Nice.
And but this is an idea that's actually achievable at our level right now because
Yeah.
and when I wrote Meth Gators, it was meant to be big and loud and explosion filled and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
This is a much more character based thing. It's much smaller, it's more intimate. And this was something, all we need is a great cast, good writing, and some good scenarios and some good effects. But we don't need, there's no big monster, there's no big explosions.
Nice.
Everything's much more on a character level.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that funding is a major part of making a movie. It doesn't matter what the movie is, no matter how, cheap it can be made, it still needs to be made with some type of funds. And a lot of
Yeah.
indie filmmakers do that through Indiegogo now. Do you have an Indiegogo for only the only ones?
I don't. Right now we have independent funding to get us through phase one of production. So phase one of production is about 90% of the script, really.
Yeah.
There's like all the main stuff with the primary cast
Mhm.
has funding and is being shot already. And then from there, we're going to move to phase two, which is at the cold open to the movie, because there's a big, elaborate fake out cold open to this movie that I want to find separate funding for. And then after that, the money that we need for like phase three, which is the movie's complete, but we need, say, composer funds or whatever post fund. Most of the post production I'm doing myself, so I'm absorbing a lot of those costs by doing most of this movie in house,
Yeah.
by shooting it myself and editing it myself, doing the preliminary sound mix, all this. But we'll find money for composer. We have to, if we're gonna do festivals, which is the plan, that's not free,
Yeah.
So you gotta, if you want to do a marketing campaign around the whole thing, all that stuff costs money. Like everything in a
Yeah.
movie, just like anything else, costs money. If you got a dude falling down the stairs in a movie, that's a stunt guy, and he's not going to do that for free.
Right, exactly. And you
Everything
can't
costs
subject your
something.
actors to do it, especially if they're doing it for free and they're like local independent actors, not trained to do stunts.
I
That's
mean, you
hazardous.
can, you just
You
might go
can.
to jail or hurt somebody. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've always subscribed to like Lloyd Kaufman's and Troma Studios philosophy with making movies, which is rule number one, safety to people. Rule number two,
Yeah.
safety to property. Rule number three, make a good movie. And number
Yeah.
three is optional.
Yep, absolutely. And one thing we always tell our actors is that if you're doing a stunt, obviously we're very cheap, so we try not to do a lot of big stunts. But
Right.
we have a certified stunt coordinator on set, and we always say this is what is in the script. If you do not feel comfortable doing this the way the stunt coordinator is doing it, and you can do it safely, tell us, and we will work with you and your comfortability. Because
Right.
obviously we don't want nobody getting hurt. That's the main thing. Nobody gets hurt.
Yeah, exactly. That's like should be everyone's main goal out of like, let's make a movie, but let's
Right.
nobody get hurt doing it, right?
Right. Absolutely. We want to have fun, but we also want to be safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's tons of examples of when that shit has gone wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Walking
you
Dead. Look
know
at The Walking Dead. One of the walkers
that's
ended up
right.
dying, during one of the scenes.
Yeah, I was doing some scenes for a movie that I was director of photography on, and a number of our actors in that scene were all meant to be on like those days, and they were down there, and the dude fell off. He was like on the scaffolding, I think, right?
Yeah,
He was like
yeah,
walking way up on the scaffolding, like he basically just backed off of a unguarded scaffolding, fell like a number of feet and died, and then the whole production obviously just shuts down until
yeah,
things get aligned. But yeah, I mean, like that's
yeah,
crazy, and but on
yeah,
that shit's easy to do. Like that's why you
yeah,
gotta have people doing those jobs, because especially on something like Walking Dead,
yeah,
know how many zombies are in that thing? They have like
yeah,
50, 100 extras. Like you
yeah.
gotta wrangle those humans and make sure you're not putting them in dangerous scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's why, as you said, that's why you get stunt people. And if you can't afford a stunt person, which some, a show like Walking Dead, I'm sure can afford stunt people, but if you can't afford stunt people, then you have to make sure that the actor can either A, do it safely and is comfortable, and B, you have a certified at least stunt coordinator at some point.
Yeah.
Somebody that's certified
Yeah.
that can walk you through it.
Even as much as like a character falling over, like even when we don't have stunt people on our shoots and we have people falling over, we have gymnastic pads, right, that we've bought just
Yep.
for this specific reason.
Yep.
And those actors at some point have talked to one of our stunt people about how to safely fall,
Yeah.
and in a way that you don't hurt yourself even when you're falling on a pad, right? So like
Right.
every little thing you just got to really think about.
Yep. I mean, there was a scene like in our movie that's currently in post 72. We have a scene where they get infected and then they turn into what we call V's because they
Hmm.
got virus, and the one girl jumps and she jumps on the back of this one person's on their back and then goes and he has to fall right on the ground. And this is all outside. Now
Right.
we obviously moved all the rocks out of the way, all the sticks out of the way, anything that would be hazardous when he falls. And then obviously there's a big stump that is there, so we shoot it this way facing the stump so they can't see the crash pad that's
Yeah,
down there
yeah,
that he's
yeah,
gonna fall on.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like things like that are ways to help actors stay safe when they're filming stunt scenes because stunts are a big part of filmmaking because you can't do a horror movie without doing a stunt scene.
Exactly. You're going to come into something and somebody's going to fight somebody at some
Yeah.
point in some way.
Yeah.
And you can't treat your actors like meat props and just toss them around.
Right.
These
Exactly.
are
You
human
can't go.
beings that are
Yeah.
there to like collaborate with you on a project. Got to keep everyone
Exactly.
safe. And we're
Exactly.
trying some, like, on the only ones, we're trying a lot of stuff that like none of us have ever done before. Like we're bringing a rain truck out for a big, huge exterior rain scene at
Nice.
night. We have extended fight sequences with some pretty elaborate death sequences and some
Yeah.
kill gags that on they in theory they're all going to work, and in practice I think they will. Like I've been working very closely with our effects artist Joan Jones,
Nice.
which is, by the way, the amazing name.
I was just gonna
But
say that's an
oh
amazing
yeah,
name.
you gotta, yeah, you like, oh, hire that person. Joan Jones sounds like a superhero, but she is a superhero in like a world of gore and effects
Nice.
makeup. But yeah, she's doing some elaborate stuff. We have some really fun kill gags planned. So
Yeah.
we've gotten to shoot one so far. All the really tough stuff is still coming up. We're doing a car crash scene too, so like that's a new thing for me.
Yeah.
I've worked on crews with car crashes, but I've never like organized my own. So
Yeah.
we're gonna tread some new ground on this movie, at least for us.
Yeah, I remember I'm like so fascinated with like rain machines and everything, and I know my very first movie, the very first scene on the very first day, I wanted a rain machine. So we're building like a rain machine. Let's just say that as we're starting to build it, we're like, we're gonna hose them down and we're gonna post production the rain drops in.
Yeah,
We don't know what we're doing. And those are things you learn that
yeah.
is like your first production, the first day of filming your very first movie, you might not want to go big or go home at that point.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, in the rain machine, that was the long process because I was gonna do the same thing. I was like
Yeah.
gonna build my own, all this stuff, and
Mhm.
I'm like, this thing's not gonna be I'm not gonna be able to make as much rain as I thought I was gonna make.
Yeah.
And I went out and had dinner with this guy who, like, that's all he does. Like he does rain and fog and exterior
Nice.
effects and blah blah blah. And he just sort of walked me through a lot of stuff, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I was like in over my head here.
Yeah.
But he's able to help us out on the one night, and yeah, they
Yeah.
truck a big van out there. It should be a lot of stuff. I mean, we got one of our props hanging in the background there.
Oh,
Those old
nice.
dangling legs back there.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, another thing I'm like I love is fog, and like I'm thinking, how do you make fog? Like dry ice, but it's like is that safe? Like you have to properly handle it, like you have to
Yeah,
make sure
yeah.
you have it, it's just there's so much that goes into it, and like sometimes if you need that for your movie, those are where you make sure your funds go.
I've gotten so far for years with the same like stupid fog machine from like Party City that I bought years ago. And if you're just you plan it right and you're downwind and you get it in your scene, it works great.
Yeah.
And it's all about there's like I've learned this too. It's all about the mixture. Like if you make your own stuff at home, you can make more like what they call graveyard fog, which sort of
Yeah.
keeps low, right? But
Yep.
the minute you get any wind, that shit's out the window. So
Yeah.
yeah, and all that stuff, especially wrangling it on location, is
Yeah.
just you're at the whim of nature at that point too. Like if it's too
Yeah.
windy, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Right. I just bought because I'm gonna for Halloween every year for Halloween I have a little Halloween party and I dress up as something and then
Awesome.
I go all out. So I'm creating this
Yes.
witch's
Love it.
station. I have a cauldron and I have all the makeup and everything. I look amazing. It's like perfect. And I was like, how am I gonna make fog come out of this cauldron and not have my smoke alarms going off?
The
So
dry ice, dude. It's the way.
yeah, I found on Amazon for $12 a mist maker that you just put 2 inches of water in and you put the mist maker in the like this little like in like a little flower pot that goes in the cauldron and then it works perfectly. It tips over the cauldron and
That's
it makes
awesome.
it's beautiful and it was only like $15 and it's like whoa.
That's awesome. Like and the dry ice really, as long as you're safe with handling it, you're
Yeah.
good to go. Like
Yeah.
last year or something, we had gotten on this kick of like we couldn't eat enough like Beyond Meat, right? So we
Yeah.
like ordered like an absurd amount from like this fucking website, and it comes to the house and it's like all packed with dry ice and stuff. And we're like, awesome, all this free dry ice. So we
Yeah.
toss it all in the sink and we just turn on the water and it instant witch's cauldron just
Yeah.
pouring over the side. It just
Yeah.
bubbled until that stuff disintegrated in like an hour or something like that. And it was like the perfect look. With this one band I used to be in, we would always play this elaborate Halloween party, and it was in an indoor pool.
Yeah.
And they would always buy a shit ton of dry ice and just dump it in the pool. And that thing would just go like all night. It was awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, we got I think it was our first Halloween party that I had since I moved down here. I got what was it? I got dry ice and we were making like witch's brew in like
Yeah.
a punch bowl and
Yeah.
we did that and it was an amazing effect. I got amazing pictures and videos and everything. But then it was time to drink it and we're like, I don't feel safe. I don't know. I don't want my
I don't
stomach
know if
to
I drink it. I don't know if
yeah,
I go that far.
because they said you could drink it when everything is like disintegrating and everything, but we didn't feel comfortable doing it. So it's like, no, we
Yeah,
just
you're not an
stopped.
expert. How you know it's all disintegrated? Well, if you get a
That
little piece, right?
exactly.
What
Apparently,
happens
according to
then? Do you
online, they say
explode?
that, but I think they're trying to kill me.
And that's what, yeah. I'm gonna be like the dude in the beginning of Scanners, and my head's gonna explode or something. I don't know what's gonna happen at that point.
Yep, yep. It was one of those things like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable drinking this. I don't care how disintegrated it is. I'm gonna
I don't
throw it
care what the
out.
internet says. I'm not
Right.
doing it.
The internet might always be right.
Internet might lie to you too. You never know
Exactly.
when your head explodes. Fucking
Absolutely.
internet.
So you did mention that you have a bunch of hard things coming, for this movie yet to film. And so I know you started already production, but what do you think is going to be the hardest in completing this movie?
The night with the rain machine,
Mhm.
probably because
Yeah.
we not only have the rain machine, but that's also like the climax of the movie.
Mhm.
And there's like quite a bit of kill effects happening on that same night. And lighting with rain is really tough because you can't just like it can't water just can't fall. You turn on a camera and it looks
Yeah.
great. Like if you don't backlight the shit out of like rain, you're like
Yeah.
not gonna see it. That's why like old Hollywood movies would mix water with milk and pump
Yeah.
that through the rain machine so that the light would pick up the water, the milky in the water, and then it would actually
Yeah.
appear on camera. Obviously, with like cameras that we're shooting on with 6K sensors, that's a lot easier. It'll pick up stuff
Yeah.
if you shoot at the right shutter speed. It'll pick it up even more. But you really do have to backlight a lot of it to get that dramatic rain night look.
Right.
So that's why you can't really shoot in the real rain because you got to get electric lights outside. So there's a lot of tough things just in lighting the scene.
Yeah.
And then let alone doing the kill effects. Like luckily we're planning it so all the kill effects happen under an enclosure. So
Right.
there's not water pouring down because we just don't have the production of the team to accomplish all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But
Yeah.
just having the rain in the background, like that whole night's going to be, it's out in the fields. It's in a remote location. There's buckets of blood. It's that's the one that's like keeping me up at night. Be like, that's a tough night. That's going to be a tough night.
Yeah, so is that the one? Like you said that you're gonna have a rain machine coming in on a truck.
Yeah.
If I'm not misunderstanding. So now, is that something that you got to pay on an hourly basis, or is that something that somebody built? Or
You get it. Yeah, we pay for it not on hourly, but you get it for the night.
okay,
So yeah, you basically pay a night rate, like much like anything else. When you kind of do rentals for film stuff, it's usually
yeah,
on a day or a weekly rate.
yeah. So that's a lot more easier to handle, I'm assuming, than building your own. Like,
Yes,
yeah,
because like
it's a
if I
lot.
were to build my own, I'd be pretty limited. Like
Yeah,
I couldn't do as wide of a shot as I would want to do
yeah,
with the amount of rain I would be able to create on my own like amateur rain machine
yeah,
look, right? But if I get this
yeah,
guy out, they have the truck, they have the huge hose, I can shoot really wide, back like put a big huge light up and we can get a
mhm,
great rain shot that I would never be able to achieve like
yeah,
on my own. And
absolutely.
at some point too, when I'm trying to juggle all these things, like I'm meeting up with effects people and I'm like
Hmm.
adjusting the script and I'm shooting this motherfucker and I'm like directing it and stuff. It's like let someone else do the rain. Like I can't,
Right.
I'm gonna falter at some point where like if something's a big, huge variable like rain,
Yeah.
I would rather someone who's like an expert in that thing be there, like just doing it.
Right. So speaking, because obviously you are the director of this movie, so do you have a specific style of directing, like a specific technique that you would like to do for the movie?
I mean, I guess sort of that tone that I brought up earlier, that Coen brothers tone is like
Yeah.
something that really fascinates me. So it's mostly the tone is an atmosphere is one of the main things that interests me in genre films. Like
Yeah.
all my favorite films are atmospheric. This one obviously is being a dark comedy, has a lot more um energy to it than like maybe
Yeah.
your typical atmospheric film, but still the tone that I'm going for is something that really fascinates me, which is that ridiculous scenario,
Hmm.
characters within it being playing it all seriously, kind of like Burn After Reading is really the more the
Yeah.
trajectory that I tried to follow with this
Hmm.
script, in which like the characters believe their scenarios have much higher stakes than they actually do.
Yeah.
uh but still the stakes become high because of their belief in the fiction, right? And
Yep.
so but like not having it be clownish and not having it be like playing it for laughs, right? The
Right.
laughs will happen because they're playing it seriously. So like those are the kinds of things we're trying to juggle with like the tone of the movie. And I guess
Absolutely.
that's the style, at least for this film, that we're going for.
Okay. Awesome. So next question has four parts. They shouldn't be too long, I would say, because it's just they're just promoting this movie more. But
Oh, I'll make them
when
long.
when and where do you start like what like where are you gonna like film this movie? And do you have an anticipated release date for it? And when this film is released, where can it be seen?
So I can't answer some of those because I don't know, but
Okay.
we're shooting most of it in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. We have a farmhouse location out there. We're
Nice.
also doing a number of scenes in and around Frederick, Maryland, where I live. We have a gas station location. We have an arcade location. We have a few other things. And then Rain Night is out in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
Um, so that's sort of the where the locations are. We're all in pretty much like remote, like rural kind of areas. We'll do
Mhm.
one little thing in Baltimore. As far as when it's done, we're anticipating being wrapped phase one of this movie by October.
Okay.
We've already been shooting. We'll be shooting through September. Hopefully, wrap our stuff early October. Move on to figuring out phase two, which is our cold opening and whatever
Okay.
else we need for the movie.
Nice.
So I don't expect it to be done till next year,
Yeah.
2023. As far as where it gets released, no idea. Because the plan is to just take this thing to festivals
Okay.
and try to secure our distribution once we have a finished, great looking film and we have something to try to sell.
Awesome. Perfect. So last question I got for you. Anything at all that you would like to promote? Any other projects, social media, websites, anything at all?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a co-host of another podcast as well,
Mhm.
called Camp Nightmare. I'm
Awesome.
shamelessly wearing our shit right now, and I co-host that with my good friend JB Dunn, and we talk weekly about horror movies. We have all kinds of guests, interviews. We just talked to Ed Sanchez, Blair Witch Project director.
Nice.
We just talked to Daniel Roebuck too, who's playing Grandpa Munster in the upcoming Monsters. We haven't dropped that interview yet, but that's coming out.
That's
So we do
awesome.
all kinds of stuff. And this weekend we're going to be, because you're dropping this today, right? You said
Yeah,
this
it'll
around
be up
fast.
today. Yep.
Awesome. Well, this weekend, if anybody is around the Gettysburg, PA area, Creature Feature Weekend is happening all weekend at the Wyndham in Gettysburg. and I'll be set up there with the Camp Nightmare booth. We'll be promoting stuff, selling merch all weekend. They're also showing one of my horror short films called Jericho Bridge at Creature Feature. That's Saturday, 4 p.m. In the Gateway Cinema on the big screen. It's a beautiful theater. And yeah, we'll be doing some live events. We're Q&Aing some of the cast of the original Halloween and the cast of some of the Friday the 13th movies in like a head-to-head Halloween versus Friday the 13th franchise, whatever Q&A session. We're going to be hosting the Savini School makeup tutorial. They're going to put some horror looks on some people. It's just going to be a lot of fun. Creature Feature is always a blast. It's one of my favorite things we do every year.
Yeah, I wanted to go to that so bad. I have my new book just came out, and I'm actually going on a book tour down in Lincoln Heights, Ireland, at the Pop and Horror Con down there.
Oh yeah. Well, isn't that's happening? That's this weekend too, right?
That's this weekend too. Yeah, that's why I can't go.
I know. I wanted to do both, and that was a bummer because I was like, "Why did you pick the same weekend? Like, why are you just do?" Oh man, I was a bummer. You should say hey to Nancy Ritter when she's down there. She's
great
an
friend
actress.
of mine. Yep.
Okay, great. She's in my movie The Only Ones. She's one of our cast members. So yeah, we're excited to have her. We also have Brett Wagner, who's known as the Lost Leatherface from the 2003 movie. He's in a bunch of other stuff, Sons of Anarchy. Got Christopher Enlow. I believe you know him as well.
Yes, I do. Yep.
Yep. He's in The Only Ones as well. And then a whole bunch of cast members who are just literally my favorite group of regional actors I've like ever worked with. So a bunch of regulars for me, like Paul Cotman, who's a rock star in my eyes. Emily Klassen, who's equally as much of a rock star. In Smack? Yes. Oh yeah, she was the lead in Smack. That is where I met her. Shooting that movie. Emily and I clicked on that movie, and I immediately, saw boatloads of talent in that girl. She's really incredible.
She's very great. Yeah, great person.
She is. And she introduced me to Tatiana Ford, who's our other lead, who's someone I needed her to have a love interest and someone that she could potentially already have chemistry with that we could capitalize with on the movie, because I'm very much taking a come as you are kind of approach and letting people bring a lot of themselves to the character. She introduced me to Tatiana, who's equally as talented. She's in it. And then as far as people who weren't actually local, we're bringing in a New York actress, Kayla Brzezikin, and she's amazing. She's done a bunch of short films, and she just blew us away with her audition. And Jeb Afiero, who's coming from Virginia somewhere, like 4 or 5 hours away, but he's great too. So it's a really killer local cast and some not local people.
That's exciting. Yeah, absolutely. I know Daniel Roebuck's going to be at Monster Mania September 3rd and October 2nd, and I'm going to Monster Mania, so I'm super excited.
Dude, yes, he's a really nice guy. He's like, he will just talk movies all day if you let him. Like, he's one of those like just archives of infinite like movie knowledge kind of guys. He's awesome. Yeah. So much fun to talk to.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Well, I thank you, Jordan, so much for joining me this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is a ton of fun. Yeah, whatever time, man. Time is
it really
abstract
is.
concept, man.
Most of my interviews are at 8 o'clock at night anymore, and this is like my first one at 3 o'clock for quite some time. So,
see, I closed the window and I don't even know. I'll get to editing and I don't know what time it is. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. Well, I thank you, and you have a great rest of your day, and enjoy Creature Feature.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.